So welcome back, everybody, and I hope you've topped up your caffeine for the final block of this afternoon's program. So without further delay, I'm very pleased to introduce the penultimate session in the conference agenda, which is going to be looking at the new dynamics in the Europe-American transatlantic alliance and whether indeed it's being reinvented around science and technology under the Biden administration. And so I'm delighted to introduce David Matthews, our international editor, who's going to be steering us through this next set of discussions. David, over to you.
Thank you, Simon. So hello, everybody. Welcome back, and I hope you're enjoying the conference so far. So I'm going to be moderating this panel on whether the transatlantic alliance is being reinvented or even reinvigorated through science and technology. So we're just over a year since the Biden administration took power, and I think it's fair to say that the mood music between Washington and Brussels has improved quite considerably. There have been some concrete steps, like last year, the inaugural Trade and Technology Council, where the EU and the US discussed trade and technology issues. But we want to discuss here what further steps we can take to improve the alliance and going forward. So I've got two great guests with me here to discuss these issues. We've got Cristina Russo, who is Director for Global Approach and International Cooperation at DG Research at the European Commission. Hello, Cristina. And I also have Reece Smyth, who is Director of the Science and Technology Cooperation Office at the US Department of State. So thank you both very much for being here. So I'd like to dive into a relatively specific development that we reported on last year. So the EU last year floated a new model grant agreement for Horizon Europe. And the hope is that this will overcome some of the bureaucratic hurdles faced by US scientists who want to join Horizon Europe projects. So my first question is to Cristina. I wonder if you can explain why this change was made and what you hope it to achieve. So over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon or good morning to everybody. Hi, Reece, very happy to be with you in this session. Yes, we have introduced the change in the model grant agreement, which follows the concerns which have been expressed for a very long time by the US administration. In fact, the concerns were related to the fact that when EU research institutions, especially public institutions, participated to the research and innovation program related projects financed by the EU and did not receive funding from the EU, they were obliged, according to the rules that we had, to sign the model grant agreement. I will not get into the details, but from the EU side, we were told that the obligations that would be put on the EU institutions would create lots of administrative burden and in fact impede the participation of some important potential participants to the EU research and innovation programs. That's why we have tried in all the ways to solve this problem, and we have found enough flexibility in the model grant agreement of Horizon Europe to in fact have this new figure, new status of associated partners, which means that when EU entities, US entities, which would like to participate to the EU-funded projects, but which would not receive EU funds, they are not anymore obliged to sign the model grant agreement. They can participate in a more flexible way by linking to one of the EU participants to the project, and they would have a much lighter contractual obligation with these other participants to the project. So this is a change that resulted from many years of discussions, and that we do hope that it will be an important contribution to the willingness that we have to revamp research and innovation cooperation with the United States, to put it to the next level, although we already start from a very good level, and that ultimately it will help the potential US participants which were discouraged to participate in the EU programs due to this administrative burden. Thank you, Deb.
Thanks very much, Cristina. Well, over to you, Reece. How big a deal is this for US scientists who perhaps in the past thought that Horizon Europe might be a little bureaucratic, but does it change things for them now?
Thank you, David. And Cristina, it's an honor to share a panel with you. Short answer, David, is yes. The United States and Europe have the world's most significant and long-standing scientific research partnerships. This is going to be important. We have a shared responsibility to work towards the health and safety of our citizens and our planet, to fight climate change and to assure we stand up for our values of democracy and human rights. The United States welcomes the recent moves by the EU to remove barriers to cooperation under Horizon Europe framework, including the update to the model grant agreement structure. The new structure will exempt EU participants not receiving Horizon Europe funding from some of the legal and administrative requirements that have hindered US entities in the past. My colleagues in the US government science agencies are encouraged by the new model grant agreement and are extremely optimistic and hope it will increase cooperation among American and European researchers. We also have seen a positive response from the US academic community. MIT's Associate Provost for International Activities, Richard Lester, told us this past week that while MIT is still reviewing the new Horizon Europe model grant agreement, it appears that the new agreement incorporates positive changes that improve MIT's ability to encourage its researchers under the right circumstances to engage in research projects that are funded under Horizon Europe.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. That's very encouraging. So just picking up on both of it, I mean, are you, either both of you, hoping then that there is more US participation in Horizon Europe than Horizon 2020? Is this something that we should expect?
Oh, sorry.
Please, Cristina, go ahead.
No, please, if you want to.
No, please.
Okay, I do ladies first. Okay, thank you very much. I think that, first of all, what I would like to say is that already we have a very good cooperation. I mean, under Horizon 2020, the previous research innovation program, the US was our first international partner with a very high participation. We had 2026 US participations in the program. So we start from a very, very good basis. And yes, to reply to your question, David, of course, we do expect that this more flexibility that we have introduced in Horizon Europe will facilitate and further increase the participation of US entities. It's too early to say, though, because the calls were launched some time ago, and we are still in the process of evaluation. So we have a bit of surprise. We will discover it in the coming weeks. And we really do expect that the participation will increase, also because we had a lot of signals from US researchers about their wish to participate to the Horizon Europe program.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cristina. Reece, would you like to add anything to that?
So, David, yes, we do. We've talked to our colleagues in the U.S. Government science agencies, and then also the positive response from the academic community. We fully anticipate that the changes will lead to more cooperation.
Okay, great. And just staying with you, Reece, are there any other changes that you would like to see in Horizon Europe that would allow more U.S. collaboration? Well,
thank you, David. U.S. researchers continue to work with and under Horizon Europe. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to strengthening the U.S.-EU relationship. And in terms of science, we will continue to work with the EU and our European partners through existing mechanisms such as the Science and Technology Agreement. And as a part of this agreement, we are working with the EU to organize a joint consultative group meeting. And this will be focused on strengthening and expanding our cooperation. We look forward to continuing to promote avenues to further scientific exchanges and strengthen the US and EU collaboration. So we're always looking for ways to strengthen our collaboration.
Okay, Great. Thank you. We'll return to that group shortly, but I just wanted to pick up on something, Reece. So obviously, earlier this week, Eric Lander, the White House scientific advisor, resigned, and he was quite instrumental in a lot of the Biden administration's R&D policy, its sort of international push for various research collaboration agreements and so on. Is that going to affect the transatlantic relationship at all in terms of science and technology?
I'll refer you to the White House for any specific questions about Dr. Lander. But what I can say is that the transatlantic relationship with the EU is an absolute priority for the Biden-Harris administration and will remain so.
Okay, thank you. Well, returning to the Joint Consultative Group, which is this semi-regular meeting, as I understand it, that's been going since 1997. And the last time I think there was a meeting of it was in 2017. Can you give me some sense of what you might, I know it's early days, but some sense of what you might want to discuss there, what you might want to achieve? Kind of what's going to be on the agenda?
Thank you, David. As you mentioned yourself, it's a bit early stage. We are trying to fix this joint consultative group meeting, which is the meeting that we regularly have under the Science and Technology Agreement between the EU and US. We are trying to have it before summer, and this would be really important because indeed we didn't have this kind of groups meeting since 2017. And what we would like to discuss is, first of all, the framework conditions of our cooperation, linked also to the EU global approach in research and innovation, which is the new international cooperation strategy in research and innovation adopted by the European Union last year, which will also be discussed now in some weeks in March in Marseille in a conference organized by the current French presidency of the Council, and the US will be invited there. So the framework conditions for cooperation, then the specific areas where we would like to enhance cooperation, which are very much linked to our key priorities, the twin transition, the green and digital transition. I would just like to mention here that yesterday the European Commission adopted the CHIPS Act, and that's a very important item also in which we could discuss on how to enhance cooperation on semiconductors, also linked with the work that we are doing within the Trade and Technology Council, to which you referred to earlier on. Then, of course, the cooperation in the area of health, which is a very important one. And let me recall there that we have a very important agreement with the National Institute of Health of the US for a specific reciprocity in this field. And then also what we would like to discuss are the different multilateral fora in which the EU and the US have a very important role. I will not list all of them, but just let me mention two: mission innovation on clean and renewable energy, and of course the Marine Research Alliance, what we call the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, which is very important, linked to the ocean cooperation, one of the missions within the Horizon Europe program, on which we are discussing with Washington and with the other participants on revamping the cooperation in light also of the important developments in this field. So it's going to be a rich committee when we will have it.
That's a lot of stuff on the agenda. Thanks so much. Can I just stay with you, Cristina, just to pick up on one of the things you said? So you mentioned the global approach. I mean, when this was launched last year, I mean, it was seen as a sort of attempt to reframe how the EU deals with scientific partners across the world. I mean, I guess China was probably the elephant in the room there. But how does it affect cooperation with the US?
Yes, I mean, the cooperation with the US is clearly mentioned in the global approach as one of the key elements of our strategy for international cooperation. And as I mentioned, we want to revamp the cooperation with the US, also in line with the Commission and European External Action Service communication of the December 2020 on revamping the transatlantic cooperation, and in line with the statements which were issued after the EU US summit, which took place just after the adoption of the global approach. So in general, we focus our cooperation on key strategic partners, amongst which the US is one. We want to focus this cooperation on better framework conditions. I spoke about reciprocity earlier on. Our program, the Horizon Europe program, is fully open to the participation of researchers from the US, and we would try to seek that the same treatment is offered to our European researchers in the different US programs. And then in terms of the sector concerned, as mentioned earlier on, we would like to focus this cooperation in particular on the twin transition and on health. And last but not least, we want to enhance this Team Europe approach, which means that we want to work in more synergies with our member states, and hence the efforts also of our delegation in Washington and my colleague also Florent Bernard, in order to mobilize the different EU member states in order to have more synergies in the cooperation that the EU is carrying out with the US on research and innovation.
Okay, thank you very much. Reece, Cristina mentioned reciprocity there. Is that something you'd like to discuss at this upcoming meeting?
You know, we're really excited to be planning the JCG with our European colleagues. The Biden-Harris administration really wants to revitalize our relationship with the EU. We want to build upon the US-EU joint statement last year, including commitments to support and strengthen research collaboration and innovation. So we're formulating our agenda right now, David, but we're open to discussing all topics in the JCG. I can say that we will be discussing our joint priorities. This includes oceans, climate change, health, and working to ensure our shared values of democracy and openness are on the agenda. The US sincerely wants to cooperate more with the EU, and this upcoming meeting is a way for us to take stock of our current mechanisms for collaboration and, where possible, expand and strengthen them.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned the CHIPS Act. So we've been talking about facilitating access to each other's programs, Horizon Europe or NIH and so on. But what about the prospect of setting up something entirely new together? So there was a piece in the Hill recently suggesting that the US and the EU should create a kind of DARPA for chips, DARPA for batteries, and all kinds of other technologies potentially on the horizon as well. Is this something you would consider, or is this a little bit too far-fetched at the moment? I don't know who'd like to take that rather tricky question.
I will try it,
sure.
if you allow it. So I think that we have set up a very important framework for enhancing the cooperation with the US, which is the Trade and Technology Council. There are 10 working groups which are working at full speed, and in this respect also, I would like to recall that at the Pittsburgh statement, our leaders in September 2021 reaffirmed their commitment to build a partnership on rebalancing supply chains in semiconductors. And there are many other areas of cooperation that are dealt in the field of the TTC. I'm personally, for example, leading the work in Working Group 2 on electric vehicle standards. At the same time, if we take the CHIPS Act, which was adopted yesterday by the European Commission, we clearly say that in order to step up our ambitions in this field, we really need to work with the like-minded countries, such as the United States. But I think it's very clearly mentioned also that we need to use the already established fora. So in a nutshell, I think that we should not aim at establishing new forums for cooperation, but we should much more exploit the fora that exist, having in light this political willingness that the EU has put clearly in the table, notably yesterday with the CHIPS Act.
Reece, would you like to come in there? So exploiting what fora do we already have that we could better use?
Well, David, this is a really interesting suggestion, and it's big ideas like this one that can help overcome momentous challenges. But the US Congress and EU are both considering bolstering our semiconductor industries through our respective CHIPS Acts. And we remain quite linked in our processes. So, I believe that we will continue to collaborate closely in this arena.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd also like to look into the medium or the long term and actually come back to Horizon Europe. Now, Horizon Europe, the EU has been pretty clear. It wants other partners from across the world to join. It's been very open to Canada. I mean, clearly we've not really had a serious discussion in public about the US ever joining Horizon Europe or a part of Horizon Europe. And it's not on the immediate agenda. But I wonder whether either of you can ever see it happening, and what would have to change in order for the US to actually play a role in Horizon Europe as an associate country to either the whole or part of the program, or is this just pie in the sky stuff, and we shouldn't expect anything on that, even in the next framework program?
Is the question addressed to me, I guess?
Well, it's addressed to both of you, really.
Okay, on my side, I would just like to say that I mentioned it earlier on that the Horizon Europe program is fully open to participation of research entities from countries outside Europe, including from the US. So we are promoting this participation as much as possible, including through this new status of associated partners, which we have put in place. We are promoting this cooperation in the different fields and modalities that I have touched upon earlier on. And as far as association is concerned, there are no invitations for association in general. The conditions are laid down on Article 16 of Horizon Europe, and this is the situation as it stands now. We are very clear on our willingness to enhance our cooperation with the United States in research and innovation, as I stated several times during this chat.
I just wondered, picking up on that, Chris, is it ever possible for a country, would you ever consider a country joining part of, or associating part of Horizon Europe? This sometimes comes up in conversations I have with countries who are maybe on the list of countries you would like to attract to Horizon Europe. Is that ever something that's discussed in Brussels?
I think that those discussions on associations, the one that started, are really still at an early stage. There are what we call exploratory talks. So we don't have yet a mandate for negotiation, which we have presented to the Council and which was agreed. So I think that it would be not correct for me to go in further details on that in this arena and at this stage.
Okay. Reece, Horizon Europe and the US, could it ever happen?
Well, David, you have to understand the bottom-up nature of our system. So the bottom-up nature of the scientific ecosystem in the US really highlights enormous potential for our scientists and researchers to work in concert with their EU counterparts and others around the world. And we welcome the moves that the EU has done, particularly on the model grant agreement, so that should enhance cooperation. Cristina, you and I both believe in the power of scientific exchanges. Our two nations, the EU and the United States, understand that scientific progress must be based on openness, especially as the world strives to combat climate change and other global challenges for the benefit of all humanity. American researchers are working closely with the EU researchers on these challenges within Horizon Europe and other frameworks, and will continue in these initiatives.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to maybe, Cristina, you've listed some of the key technologies and research agendas that are really important to the EU. If I could come back to Reece and say, all increased research collaboration is great, but what are this administration's priorities in terms of research areas? So climate, hydrogen, quantum, etc. If you had to pick sort of 3 that you would want to build extra links with the EU on, which ones would you pick?
Well, the Biden-Harris administration, along with the EU, established a number of policy areas for collaboration. First, we are working together to end the COVID-19 pandemic while strengthening global health security. Second, we are working to protect our planet and foster green growth. And third, we are strengthening trade, investment, and technological cooperation to ensure a more democratic, peaceful, and secure world. Example of our joint programs are Vaccinating the World, Saving Lives Now, Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, and combining the US and EU's clean tech innovation capacities. Together, the US and EU collaboration holds enormous promise in addressing the challenging problems in the world, and it's a priority for the Biden-Harris administration.
Cristina, are those priorities that the EU share? Or do you have anything that wasn't on that list that you would also like to add to it?
No, I think that Reece was quite on our line in the priorities that he mentioned. I would just like to conclude, since I think we are reaching the end of this interesting discussion, to say also that amongst the priorities that we list, the one on ocean cooperation is really very important, this revamping of the All Atlantic Ocean Alliance, and it's something that we want really to further discuss with the US in order to see how the EU and the US can continue to be also leading in this very promising and important area and challenging one.
Yep, you're right. We're approaching the end of the session. So, is there anything either of you would like to say that we haven't touched on? Any other schemes or initiatives or anything else on the Washington-Brussels science and technology relationship that we haven't touched on that you would also like to stress?
If I may, I would just like to say that I'm very, very excited of the perspective that we have of really having this consultative, the joint consultative group meeting, and of really moving forward along the lines that we spoke, with great political willingness and all the modalities that we have listed. I'm very happy also of having contributed to develop this associated partner figure modality for working under Horizon Europe, because I think it was necessary to really end a discussion which lasted many, many years. So this is just a note of being positive, with which I would like to conclude my intervention today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's certainly more positive than it was, yes, just over a year ago, shall we say. Reece, final thoughts?
No, I'd just like to echo Cristina. We're very excited to be watching the revitalization of the US-EU relationship, and we're very happy and excited to be planning the JCG meeting later this year, and are just it's like you said, a real turning of the page, and it's amazing where the relationship is compared to what it was a year ago. Okay,
well, thank you very much for both of you. That's been a really enlightening talk. We've talked about this new model grant agreement that hopefully gives US scientists more capacity to engage in Horizon Europe. We've talked about this upcoming meeting and how lots of the EU's policy agenda, including the global approach, will impact the relationship with the US. And we've set out some the key priorities, including tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, and also oceans, I think, came up quite regularly, and also digital transformation. So thank you both again. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us, and I hope the audience found that informative. And with that, I will say thank you again and go over to Simon in the studio. Thank you.
David, thanks ever so much, and also to Reece and Maria Cristina for a fascinating discussion. I think we all embrace the idea that a revitalized transatlantic alliance based in science and technology programs will be a huge boon, not just for the two partners, but for international science, tech, and innovation as a whole. So we keep our fingers crossed, and at Science Business, we'll be following that story very closely over the weeks and months to come.